to the study of English literature. So today I will be taking up the topic which is related to dramatic type, and that is tragedy and comedy. Now these two form are uh, the most popular form in dramas, on whose genre drama is written. And though there are tragic comedies also, but mostly dramas are either tragedy or it is comedy. uh, though their history plays also, but these two form are the most popular. So uh, there will be comparison also and characteristic as well. So tragedy and comedy are the two distinguished feature of drama. From the if we see the background, we see that from the earliest time, drama has been divided broadly into two categories, and that is tragedy and comedy. The one dealing with the dark side of the life, which is tragedy, and the other, like comedy, dealing with the lighter side. Tragedy aims at inspiring us with pity and awe, which is also called as catharsis. Comedy aims at evoking our laughter. In tragedy, the characters are involved in circumstances that impel them towards an unhappy fate. In comedy, though fortune may be unkind for a life, all comes right in the end. Tragedy in the Greek drama deals with the fate of character of high birth and station, king, princess, and their household. Same is the case with the drama related with British literature, especially in the Elizabethan age. Comedy with people of much less importance in Greek drama, and also as well as in some of the British drama. In ancient Greece, the tragic actor put on a thick-soled and high-heeled boot called the buskin of Cothornus to make him appear tall and majestic. So this was preferred in Greece drama at that time. The comic actor wore a light shoe called the sock to show his lower degree. Though humble men can suffer just as deeply as the great, and their misfortune equally deserve our pity, it was not unreasonable for the old dramatists to feel that only the lives of the famous and the powerful offered fitting subjects for tragedy. The fall of a king or the ruin of a great family is bound to be more impressive to the spectator than the fate of a non-entity, and means non-entity, and the doings of an ordinary mortal can scarcely be clothed in sublime poetic language, grandeur and dignity. So in Greek drama, the aristocratic people, or the people living in belonging to the higher status of the society, were preferred. Milton lines in Second Penseroso give the essence of classical tragedy. I'm quoting some of the lines of it. Sometime let's gorgeous tragedy in say pied pall comes sweeping by, presenting thieves of Pelope or the tale of Troy divine. So uh, we all know that the base of British literature is Greek. So whether it was Shakespeare or Milton, they all were inspired by the Greek tragedy. In later literature, there were many tragedies of lowly life and many comedies of high society. The most poignant of Hardy's tragic novel, for example, Tess of the D'Urbervilles, which was successfully dramatized, has a dairymaid for its heroine. So uh, in 19th century, especially romantics, they preferred common man, whether it was poet or it was novelist or dramatist. They preferred uh, lower section of the society or the poor class. So in this tragedy, there is no hero, it is a heroine. And some of the most memorable figures in Shakespearean comedy are people of rank. For example, first Falstaff and Sir Toby Welch among the men, and Portia and Rosalind among the women. So they all belong to the aristocratic class or higher section of the society. Tears and laughter over, and one thing is of high great relevance, and that is that in Shakespeare tragedy, it was the male figure who was predominant, and the female was not portrayed as strong, or was not giving much space. But this was opposite in the comedies. In the comedies, it was female who was predominant, and the male were a little bit lesser, given the little bit lesser role than the females. So tears and laughter override consideration of caste, creed, or color. One might weep as much for Dairy Maid Tess as for King Lear, or laugh as much as Sir John Falstaff as at Nick Bottom. So there are some people joining also. Uh, the 18th century saw the rise of a new type of tragedy called the domestic tragedy, which is also called as kitchen sink drama, which attempted to use the character and incident of ordinary life as the subject of serious drama. See, if we see Shakespeare tragedy, we find that Shakespeare doesn't portray his character as poor mean creature. Means if a character in his drama dies, whether it is Hamlet or anybody, we don't feel pity for it, because this is something which gives a tragedy a more meaningful structure. But if we see Hardy portrays his character as a very poor means character who are victim of fate and destiny, and when we read them we feel very pity for them. But this is not the case with Shakespeare. So there are lots of kitchen sink drama written during 19th century or later on. So George Lillo's London Merchant is a famous example. Men of letter praised it, royalty perused it in Palace Bordeaux, spectator flocked again and again to see it on the stage. So this kind of tragedy, which is called as domestic tragedy or kitchen sink drama, it was very much liked in the 19th century and later on in the 20th century, and it was very much praised by not only by the higher section of the society but the common people also, and they got royalty, and when it was staged it was very much liked by all people irrespective of any section of the society, and it became very popular. So Mansfield and Galsworthy have been equally successful in their own age. One relevant thing about it that, however, be borne in mind, plays of this type were written in prose, not in verse. So earlier there was plays were written in the verse form, but as the time proceeded, were written in the prose form. In India also we have seen that like Ramayana, Mahabharata, they all are written in verse form. In India they are written in chaupai. So poetic form is the most oldest and the form, whether it is Oriental world or it is Occidental world. Now tragic and comic atmosphere. So when we see the atmosphere of tragedy is sombre and serious. That of comedy is mirthful and light. Tragedy purges the emotion through pity and terror. As we have, as Aristotle's famous phrase is that comedy moves us to laughter, whether it is thoughtful laughter or unalloyed mirth. So we are, when we talk about them, of course, they are pure tragedy and pure comedy in which there is no element of the one mingle with the other. Such were the classical plays of both Greece and Rome. So British literature owes to Greece and Rome in terms of drama. In English literature, the two are frequently found intermingled. There are comic interlude in many of the tragedy and a background of tragic possibility in many of the comedies to heighten the effect of each by contrast. See, in tragedy also, from beginning to end, there is not tragedy all the time. There are some lighter moment also. So, to ease the moment means if it is serious from beginning till the end, then people will not find it interesting. So make it a little bit lighter. There are some comic element also. Uh, so okay, so when we the Shakespeare tragedy may begin happily and end unhappily, and his comedy may begin unhappily and end happily. The final situation is all the more affected by contrast with what has gone before. This type of plot suits the English temperament and is also more in accordance with the realities of life, which is never wholly sun or wholly shadow. So these variation, however, do not affect the general atmosphere, which is gloomy in tragedy and bright in comedy, as we have already discussed earlier. So the one moves inevitably towards disaster, and tragedy moves uninvitedly towards disaster, and the comedy toward resolution of any discord or conflict. In tragedy, a situation or conflict arises, and uh, in the end we see a disaster. But in comedy, if any situation arises, we see a solution in the end. So there is Valerio 78st 098. He's just saying hello. If you have any queries, please ask. So please keep the comment. I am a teacher. Please, if you are writing any comment, please, it should be decent. There should be no undecent comment on my post. I am a teacher, not influencer. I'm just teaching. I'm not dancing in my videos. So this Sumit Dhingra, please be careful or I will complain it. So, both comedy and tragedy aims at giving pleasure. This is obvious enough as regard comedy, but it may seem strange to say that pleasure can be found in the spectacle of a human being suffering an unhappy fate. Nevertheless, tragedy does afford pleasure and of lofty order. The spectacle of a noble character caught in the coils of circumstances, when the language and the artistry of the present rise to match the high passion and issues of the story, carries the audience to a level far above the petty interest and troubles of its own everyday life. It feels exalted and ennobled rather than distress. I hope YouTube is watching everything. If somebody is writing a negative comment, please block that person. It would echo Milton's word, nothing is here for tears, nothing to wail or knock. Its sensation when the curtain drops are akin to the sad wonder which the sight of the ruins of fallen empire stirred in Byron uh, Child's Herald. For the Greek, however, tragedy and comedy served two distinct purposes. The purpose of tragedy was to effect a catharsis or purgation of the emotion, and that of comedy was to correct man. Tragedy purified the feelings, comedy refined the conduct. The one raised the audience morally and spiritually, the other corrected its social failing. At the end of Milton Samson Agoniste, a tragedy constructed on the Greek model, the onlooker are dismissed. I quote the lines of this poem. This tragedy with new acquist gain of true experience from this great event and calm of mind all passion said. So this expresses the functions the tragedy was supposed to fulfill on the Athenian stage. Comedy serves to show the common error of life in the most ridiculous and scornful sort that may be, so as it is impossible that any beholder can be content to be such a one. The story in tragedy, as in comedy, is usually allowed to convey its own moral, though it is sometimes stated as the end of the play by one of the characters. Even in the most tragic drama, wrong does not triumph, though right may have been worsted for a time, verse for a time. The wrongdoer punished if they have not already brought about their own undoing, and sometimes good comes out of evil. As in the reconciliation of the Montague and Calypat at the end of Romeo and Juliet. These concluding episodes, coming after the peak of the tragedy, have often been said to produce an anticlimax, but they have said their own importance, for they bring it home to us that life goes on after the worst of catastrophe. And thus, as has been finely said of the entry of Fortinbras after the death of Hamlet, they link the action with eternity. So, verse used to be medium for both tragedy and comedy. We all have seen how verses are used, whether it is Oriental drama or Occidental drama, whether it is Hindi or English or Greek or French. Shakespeare comedies are written in blank verse, often as superbly wrought as in his tragedy. There are, of course, prose passages in both, usually when a clown, a rustic, or a madman is speaking. Though sometimes, for example, in As You Like It, which is a famous tragedy of comedy of Shakespeare, the principal characters have gone conversation in prose. The playwright moved from one to the other as he thought fit. Gradually, however, came to be reserved for tragedy and comedy, confined itself to prose. It continued for some time to be, as in the works of the Restoration dramatists such as Congreve, prose of a very ornate, imaginative, witty, and unrealistic order, and it was only at a comparatively recent date that it came really close to the form of ordinary conversational speech. Naturalism was untimely victorious in the theatre as elsewhere, and even tragedy at lengthy descended to prose. The last blank verse tragedy to be presented with any outstanding success on the London stage were those of Stephen Philip at the beginning of this century. In freer verse mingled with a rich oriental prose, there was James Elroy Fleckner Hassan in 1922. The general change of medium has necessarily means a heavy loss in splendor of language, but impressive tragedies have nevertheless been written in contemporary prose. So later on, verse were replaced by prose. Galsworthy Justice, for example, is a fine example of it. Modern drama is general, it is a prose art form. So now no drama is written in poetic form except a few, and mostly they are written in prose form. So what are the types of tragedies? So tragedy can be classified in two ways, with reference to its forms or structure and with reference to its matter or theme. From the earliest time, broadly speaking, tragedies has assumed only two forms, classical and romantic. The former based on uh, the Greek convention, like tragedy, classical type is based on Greek convention, and romantic being only its own standard. The main features of the classical types are observation of what are called the three unities and the employment of the device of the chorus. The theory of the three unities of time, place, and action, uh, time, action, and place, is based on the passages in the writing of Aristotle. Aristotle, however, mentioned only the first two, the third, that of place, being implied in the first. Unity of time means the time over which the plot is spread and that occupied in its representation on the stage should be the same or approximately the same. Uh, Apparently, it was held that if events extending over years were shown in a few hours on the stage, they would have no resemblance of reality for logical Greek mind. The unity of action makes a double provision. The plot should either be purely tragic or purely comic, but not a mixture of the two. though there was some light relief in the tragedies of Euripide. Euripide is another Greek classical writer, and no subplot or episode unconnected with the main theme should be introduced. In other words, the action, which is the also event of the play, should be continued confined to one species and one single plot to ensure verisimilitude. The incident must all be logically connected. The unity of place is a natural corollary of the unity of time. If uh, if the play must limit itself to events that cover only a few hours, it must be confined to one place. The scene could not, in those days, have been Athens in the first act and Alexandria in the next, as that would require a plot spread over a long period and so violate the unity of time. The scene must be such as might be conceivable within the short time allowed to the action of the plot. The chorus is the only noteworthy element in Greek tragedy. It consisted of a body of actors whose business was to report what happened off the stage and to make such moral comment from time to time as would deepens the desired effect. It was sometimes an integral part of the plot, sometimes only loosely related to it. The Greek theatrical tradition, the heavy costume, the obstructive cothurness, and the loosely hanging mask, all of which the tragic actor put on to appear something more than human, did not favor the representation of violent physical action on the stage. These were reported instead by the chorus. Its most important function, however, was to send the audience away with a strengthened conviction of the might of the god, for which purpose it frequently indulged in lengthy moral reflection, interrupting the progress of the plot. The romantic tragedy is built on a different plan. It is not circumscribed by the three unities and for an occasional introductory passage. It does not employ the chorus, being neither afraid of introducing physical action on the stage nor compelled to be didactic. It is not debarred from choosing a plot ranging from long stretches of time or necessarily a mixture of the tragic and the comic, or from introducing a subplot. The scene of an action may also change as often as the plot requires. Romantic tragedy, in short, is written not to a set pattern but in whatever form the writer finds best suited to his dramatic purpose. The name of Shakespeare is inseparably associated with this type of tragedy, though it has been popularized earlier in England by Marlowe. Marlowe has been a great writer of English literature before Shakespeare, and there are even some critics who believe that scholars who believe that Shakespeare and Marlowe are the same person, which is not true. From the standpoint of matter or theme, there can be numerous divisions of tragedy corresponding to the number numerous subject it treats of, but the following variety figure prominently in English dramatic literature: the horror tragedy of Webster and Ford, specializing in scenes of violence and cruelty; the heroic tragedy of Dryden and Otway, dealing with the exploit of a sublime hero and sometime in rhyme; the she tragedy of Rowe, deriving its title from a central female figure who dominates the action; and the domestic tragedy of the 18th century, aiming at the portrayal of middle class life and employing prose, not verse. Then there are types of comedies as well. Like tragedies, comedies may be classical or romantic in design according as it observe or ignore the classical rule explained above. The classical form was essayed, among others, by Ben Jonson and the Restoration playwright. The romantic by Shakespeare and the university wits, including Lyell, Green, and Nash. Its division according to theme are against numerous. The humor comedy of Ben Jonson, satirizing eccentricity, which was supposed to be due to an excess of one of the form, humors or natural fluid of the body, blood, flame, color, and melancholy or black bile. The restoration comedy of Integru, specializing in situation arising out of infidelity in love and marriage. The comedy of manner also of the restoration period in which the language and behavior was highly stylized and artificial. The gentle comedy of Cole Cibber ridiculing the affectation, the wigs, the shoes, the ribbon, the toilet, etc. of 18th century society, and the sentimental comedy of the late 18th century, presenting in place of laughter, tear, in place of intrigue, melodramatic and distressing situation, and in place of raw and gallant and witty damsel, pathetic heroines and serious lover and honest servant. Then this is, if you want to read in detail, you can read the book British Drama by Lardile Nico. So another basis of classification is sometimes used if the plot unfolds itself mainly through dialogue or narration, assigning a subordinate place to incident or action. The result is a comedy of dialogue. If mainly through action with dialogue playing a secondary part, the result is a comedy of incident. A well-built comedy unites both in judicious proportion. Even in comedy, the language and the atmosphere of the English drama remain fairly remote from that of ordinary life until the 1860s, when T.W. Robertson cast show that could be done with moral, natural speech and subject. The movement has a setback later in the century when plays of fashionable society and somewhat artificial issues and emotions held the stage for a while, but in afterwards had a vigorous revival when Harshen time brought about great changes in the structure and outlook of English social life. So this is what is all about drama, tragedy and comedy. So I hope it is clear. See, I make videos related with uh, the English literature and language, or some time of travel, or everything related with books or academics. But there are, I never had experience something like this, which I have experienced today. A very derogatory comment. Some people, there are some pervert in the society who doesn't want women to achieve anything, or they want women to be at their level. So there is a man, his ID is, I don't know what is, he's a man or a boy. His name is Sumit Dhingra 3903, and he's been commenting wrong wrong sexual comment on my post. I was just discussing something related with the academic, and this person Sumit Dhingra 3903 is has been commenting derogatory or sexual comment on my post. So I hope this kind of comment will not be posted on my videos later, because I will take action. I'm a woman activist and I'm an international woman activist. Next time I will not leave this. So all these pervert, these are evils of our society. We have to eliminate them from our society. We have to eliminate these kind of pervert from our society. Thank you.